It is time once again for the Garden Doctor Show with Dick Zondag from Jung's Garden Center in Randolph. He's here to answer all your garden-related questions at 885-4446-1920, 885-4446. Once again, welcome to the radio, Dick.
Thank you, John. And Brenda, better look out. You're doing a great job.
I don't think she's in any jeopardy. She will be back tomorrow, though, doing the idea exchange. And what's happening at the store? We had that beautiful week of warm weather.
It was really beautiful, and we got all the plants out now. I think it's time to get the stuff out. If we're going to have a really late frost, just a matter of throwing a blanket or an old sheet or a piece of plastic or something over it, because there's enough heat stored up in the ground now that would keep the plants from freezing. So time to get out in the garden. We have a lot of beautiful annuals, hanging baskets, things for your mother, or a gift certificate. Let her pick out what she wants, and we've got all those available at Jung Garden Center, and we've got a pretty good selection of fruit trees and raspberries and strawberries and potatoes and onions and whatever you need for your garden that's available. The lawns need a fertilizing now, and now's the time to put the broadleaf weed killer on. Not Fertilome, but Bonide has a very good weed killer called Weed Beater Ultra, and it works really, really good on dandelions, creeping Charlie, plantain, most of the broadleaf weeds that are invading your lawn. And, of course, the fertilization would thicken your lawn up. They're greening up really, really nice. So if your lawn isn't growing well, now's the time to get some fertilizer on. My dad used to give people a small bag of fertilizer and tell them to go make their initials in their lawn, and it was almost inevitable that a week later they would be coming back for fertilizer, because the place where they fertilized the initials of their name came out really, really green, and the rest of the lawn looked parched a little bit. So, yeah, the fertilizer really does bring the green back into your lawn, and now's the time to do it, because you want to do it before the hot weather comes. Grass mainly grows in the spring and in the fall, and so you want to fertilize the grass when it favors the lawn and not the weeds. So now's the time to get that fertilizer on. And away it goes. With the rain coming in, that'll take that fertilizer down, and that grass will green up almost immediately. Same way with strawberries and some of your things in your fruits in your garden, especially the rhubarb. They are heavy feeders. They like to be fed, so they'll get much better. You'll get much better stalks, and the strawberries will be better if you give them a little extra fertilizer now to get them going. So fertilizer, although I used to think, why fertilize? Now I know that a little bit of that extra fertility really pays off. And so whether it's perennials, time to get the roses pruned up. My roses didn't make it through the winter very well.
Oh, they didn't.
So I'll have a lot of new roses in my garden.
All three of the roses I got from you came through this
Well,
spring.
Great. That's great. So time to get out there and prune them back a little bit, take the dead wood out, and then prune them back so that you have at least pencil diameter wood, because that's where the best buds will come from, the strongest buds, and little fertilizer on them, rose fertilizer, they'll grow, and they're really beautiful. As I always say, roses are blonde, and so you need to give them a little extra pampering. And maybe I shouldn't say that, right, John? I don't know.
Mum's the word for me. I'm
right.
Pleading the fifth here.
Yeah.
We do have some of your legions of fans, Dick, with phone calls now. So let's go to the phones. You're on the air with the Garden Doctor.
Hello.
Good morning.
I have a problem with my hostas. When
Okay.
they came up, it looked like the center of the hosta plant was eaten out and maybe off to the side. Is that possibly slugs? And if I buy that sluggo, how do I apply it?
Well, right now it wouldn't be slugs, because I don't think that they've emerged yet. Have you divided your hostas very
I haven't divided them in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. When you usually start getting rot in the middle of a clump, it means that the clump is too large and the plant is thinning itself out. If it's pretty large, if it's more than a foot or a foot and a half in diameter, you probably should be digging half of it out and transplanting it and then fertilizing the half that you leave in the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because some of mine are 3 to 4 foot across.
Oh, yeah. Then they definitely need to be divided.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks for calling.
All right, thank you. 885-4446-1920, 885-4446 to get on the air with Dig Zondag from Jung's Garden Center in Randolph. And while we await another call, let's talk about more that's happening at the store that you got going on.
The potted nursery is open now, too, so if you don't want to use bare root stuff, the potted nursery is open and trees are starting to green out. So if you want a little bigger size than what we have in the bare root area, we have 15-gallon containers, and I wish I remembered the cost, but I can't off the top of my head remember how expensive they are. But we have a very good selection of maples and mountain ash and flowering crabs, birch, linden, a lot of different varieties. So if you have a specific need, if you don't want a huge shade tree, we have some intermediate sized ones, or if you want a smaller tree, the crabs and the mountain ash and the birch do very well for a small tree.
Okay, we do have more phone calls, 885-4446-1920, 885-4446 to get on the air with Dig Zondag from Jung's Garden Center of Randolph. Caller, go right ahead with your question.
Hi, can I split my rhubarb yet? Do you have to do that in the fall, or can you do that now?
You're really a little past the time when it's safe to divide your rhubarb. But if it's a really large clump, I think I would chance it yet. It's better if you do it in the fall or in the early spring before the rhubarb really starts to grow. But if the stalks are thin and you're getting a lot of flowers,
I
think I'd probably try it, And what you do is you dig, if it's a really large clump, you dig half to 2/3 of the clump out. Leave the area that you leave in the ground exposed to the sunlight for a few days, because that'll heal it over a little bit, and then fertilize it. And then the part that you dig out, you can divide that and plant it back in your garden or throw it away, because we don't want you giving it to your neighbors, because then they don't come to Jung Garden Center.
What kind of fertilizer do you put on there then?
Just a regular garden fertilizer, a 5-10-5 or a 888. The bag says garden fertilizer on it. It's pretty safe to use it in the garden.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the other line. And you're on the air with the garden doctor. Go right ahead.
Yes, I'm just curious. We asked somebody to come and roll our yard, but they claimed that it was frozen too much through the winter. Is that true or not? I mean, that we can't get it rolled now, or what?
Rolling a lawn, unless you've got a lot of high spots.
I do.
Okay, well, I don't recommend it, because what it does when the soil is wet, it tends to ruin the structure of the soil. So if you're going to roll a lawn, you should probably do it in the fall rather than in the spring, because then the freezing and thawing in the wintertime will restore the structure of the lawn. But if you've got a lot of ridges and things like that, then rolling probably isn't a bad idea to do right now, at least while there's a little bit of moisture in the soil. If the soil is too wet, though, you certainly don't want to do it, because then, first off, the tractor that's pulling the roller is going to leave ruts in the lawn, and if it compacts it too much, then you're going to be ruining your soil structure for a year.
Okay, so it's better to wait to fall then.
Yeah, I think I would do it in the fall, right after it rains, so that the soil can get moved, and There's a lot of people that do roll their lawns every year, and they seem to have great lawns. But I do know that you lose porosity in the soil, the amount of airspace, and sometimes that's, especially on a heavier soil, is detrimental.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yep, thanks for calling.
All right, thank you. That's why Dick is here answering your garden-related questions at 885-4446. Let's return to the phone calls. You're on the air with the Garden Doctor.
Hi, I've got a question for you.
Yep.
I put sleeves on my Rose of Sharon last fall,
Okay.
so the rabbits didn't eat them.
Okay.
Now, do I take the sleeves off?
Oh, yes, definitely.
The sleeves have to come off.
Yeah, they should come off because you want that plant to grow. So the sleeves are basically the winter protection and the protection against the rabbits, and you really don't need that now because there's plenty for the rabbits to eat. So they usually don't eat bark when they can eat clover and grass and stuff like that.
All right. That's
Although
all
if
you
you've got a
needed to
garden-
know, and I thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you very much for your phone call. Are rabbits a major problem in this area?
Yes.
They just
Yeah, they are. There's just hundreds of them everywhere. And although they like grass and clover, they also like bean sprouts as they're coming up in your garden, and they like a lot of stuff that, that people put in their gardens, the cabbage plants and the broccoli and the Brussels sprouts. So there's if you've got a rabbit problem and you're planting a garden, it's probably a good idea to put a repellent near where they are so that it keeps the rabbits out of your garden and sends them to your neighbor.
Dick, I don't know if you should be giving this advice. But are there other little creatures like gophers that cause problems,
there's
or
all
chipmunks?
kinds of things that like to get in and eat those young sprouts as they're coming out of the ground. Rabbits are probably the most destructive, but there are other things that come in. Some of them that just clip the plants off and let them lay there, which is even worse, I guess. But I put up a short chicken wire fence around my garden until the plants are up and the leaves are kind of mature, and then they let them alone. It's really the sprouts as they're coming out of the ground that they like. So, Yep.
Well, we got another caller on the line, 885-4446, to get a hold of the Garden Doctor. We're here for another 15 minutes. Go ahead. You're on the air with Dick Zondag.
Is it a good idea to plant your Easter lily outside?
You can try it. You may get another flower in September, but the bulbs that they use for Easter lilies are not hardy enough for our winters. So it would just be another blossom in the fall, and then I think the winter would turn that bulb into compost.
Okay, thank you very much.
They breed those Easter lilies so that they bloom at a certain period of time and after a certain treatment and stuff like that, and they do it so that they have a really good chance of getting them in blossom by Easter time. But they're grown in Washington and Oregon and on the west coast there, where they've got a very mild winter. And actually, the Easter lilies are dug like in August or September, and then they go in pots right away so they can root down. And then there's a regular pattern that you follow, a regular recipe. Although we don't grow Easter lilies for sale, but there's a regular recipe that they follow: how many days in the cooler and how many days under this and that and the other thing, and they usually hit Easter right at the right time. But those bulbs are not hardy.
Okay. The plant just looks so pretty.
Yeah,
I thought
it does.
I'd give it a chance. But thank you very much.
Yep, thanks for calling.
Okay.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much for your call. Take care, and we'll go to the other line. You're on the air with the Garden Doctor.
Yeah, I have a question. About 3 years ago, I bought a plant over there. I think it was called a spirivia or something.
Spirea?
You'd take that stuff and you'd dump on it, and it would turn the flowers blue or pink.
Oh, okay. It's a hydrangea.
Hydrangea, yeah.
Right, and it depends on what color you want, and you're testing my knowledge. I think if you put the acid on, it turns blue, and if you just plant it and let it grow, it's pink. So if you want it blue, you have to get the acidifier, the soil acidifier, and we have a couple different ways of doing that. If you want to do it over a long term, you use that soil acidifier, and then you put sulfur around them too. And the sulfur is slowly changed into an acid that keeps that blossom blue.
Yeah, well, I got a big problem with it. The first year it was all right. Now the last 2 years, nothing comes up.
Really?
Just the roots are there.
It's dead?
It's dead. There's nothing that comes up.
Really?
I give $40 for that doggone thing.
Well, I don't know what to tell you about it. Yeah, if it's not growing, it's probably dead. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, it's dead. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for your call. Let's go to the other line, 885-444-6192. 885-444-46. And let's go to the other line. You're on the air with the Garden Doctor.
Hello. I plan on doing something different with my cucumbers and squash that I want to plant this year. I've got some old tractor tires, and I want to lay them down, and I want to put in topsoil, rotten cow manure, and a little 10-10-10 and mix that up and then plant. Tell me if I'm going in the right direction with that.
Okay. The first thing when you're planting something in a container, and that's basically what you have. A tire is kind of like a square foot garden, which I do myself. You want to have more. Compost or cow manure than you want to have soil, because you have to get the watering correct. If you put too much soil in, they tend to dry out. I would not use 10-10-10 on any kind of vine crop, because that's a corn fertilizer and it has too much readily available nitrogen, and those plants will grow like crazy, but they'll forget to throw out flowers until it's too late, and then the fruit won't mature. So use a regular garden fertilizer rather than a 10-10 on the fertility side.
Okay.
And it should work fine. I grow zucchini and butternut squash and straw bales, and that works really good if you've got the bales tempered properly.
It seems to me when I was at Fleet a year ago, I bought their 20-pound bag, what they called garden fertilizer, and I believe the label had 10-10-10 on it.
Really?
What would be a good garden fertilizer to buy? You had mentioned 888.
A 5-10-5 or a 888, and if you use a 10-10, I would go very sparingly with it. You can use it, but you just don't want to use a lot of it because it has too much nitrogen in.
Well, no, I'm looking for an idea, and I appreciate your comment. So I'd be better off without any kind of
well, I think if you're using cow manure and it's well rotted, there should be a lot of nutrients in that, and there should be nutrients in the soil. So what I would do is make your mixture up about half and half, or a little more compost than dirt, and then plant your seeds and see what color the leaves are. If the leaves are a nice dark green and the plant is growing, you've got plenty of fertility in there. If the leaves are sort of a yellowish color and you can see the veins, then that means that you're missing something. And so then, a soluble plant food would work really good. Fertilome's Rooting and Blooming, or, Mure Acid is another one that grows really, does a lot of things for a lot of plants. So, but I would judge the amount of fertilizer that you have to use by the color of the leaves. And if the leaves are not a good color, next year you might want to incorporate a little 10-10 into the soil.
Okay, great. Hey, I really appreciate the information.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you for calling. Got about 10 minutes left in the show. 885-444-6192. 885-4446 to get on the air with Dig Zondag from Jung's Garden Center in Randolph. Let's go to the other line. You are on the air with the Garden Doctor. Go right ahead.
Good morning. Speaking of fertilizer, I bought some Osmocote 14.
Right.
Now, is it time to put that on?
Yes, and you mix it into the soil, because if you leave those pellets exposed to the sunlight breaks down the pellets, and all of the fertilizer that's inside the pellets is released. Osmocote works because And it's, triple 14, if you just put triple 14 on your plants, they would go nuts. But the reason that Osmocote works so well is that it takes water to leach some of that fertility out of those little pellets. And so every time you water, it leaches a little bit of fertility out of those pellets, and therefore it works really, really good. So, yeah, the Osmocote works really good in potted plants, in house plants, in your garden.
Perennials?
In perennials, too. But there again, you want to incorporate it into the soil so that they're not showing on the surface.
So if I take the bark chips away from around the plant and I just work the soil up a little bit?
Or you just take the bark away and throw it on top of the soil and then put the bark back.
Oh, I don't have to even work the soil.
No, you just have to keep the little pellets from being exposed to the sun, which breaks them down. And it's called a semi-permeable membrane. And if you let it expose to the sunlight, it breaks down that membrane, and all of that fertilizer, which is completely soluble in water, is available to the plant immediately. So.
Okay, and I just sprinkle a little bit around each one, huh?
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks for calling.
All right, bye.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the other line. You're on the air with the Garden Doctor. Go right ahead.
Good morning. Okay, speaking of fertilizer, okay, for hyacinths and tulips and daffodils, what's a good liquid fertilizer to put on, and when would you put it on?
Yeah. You could put it on right now, and a liquid plant food I would use is something where the first number isn't as big as the other two numbers.
Okay.
The first number is the nitrogen. You don't want to over-stimulate those things to grow. You want to give them the phosphorus and the potassium that makes the bulbs really, really healthy.
So would that be like the fertilizer?
Yeah, the rooting and blooming is excellent.
Okay.
And you'd put it on right now, and then maybe again in the fall.
Okay, because my hyacinths, I got some that look really good and some that just are just real spindly and funny look, and I don't know if that'll help them or not.
Right. And how long have they been in the ground?
Maybe 2 years.
Okay. I would check and see how deep those bulbs are, because they tend to come, every time they blossom and stuff, they get a little closer to the surface, and sometimes if you don't plant them deep enough, they'll actually come up to the surface.
How deep are they supposed to be in?
8 to 10 inches.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah, because the bulbs, the fall bulbs that you plant like to be in a cool soil, and if they're in a cool soil, they tend to stay one bulb longer, and they'll have a much nicer flower each year. The smaller the bulb, the smaller the flower will be, and so if they get too close to the surface of the soil is warm, and they tend to shatter and make a lot of little bulbs, and you want to keep them as large as possible for as long as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, and let's go to the other line for the Garden Doctor. Got a couple minutes left on the show. You're on the air. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I got two questions. I had a big brush pile, had some leaves and grass too. I burned that in the middle of my garden.
Okay.
Now, a friend said that you may have. Can I do some damage to the soil, or should it be something I should treat the soil with, where that big brush pile and stuff was?
Well, I wouldn't do it, because what it's doing is burning up some of the organic matter that's in the soil. What I would do is where that fire was, is see if you've got a farm friend or something that has well-rotted manure, and put a layer of that on, maybe 2 or 3 inches deep, and then work it into the soil, and that will build up the soil under where that fire was.
Can I use a granular fertilizer instead of manure? But
yeah, you can use granular fertilizer, but it's not going to build up the texture of the soil, which is what you're losing when you have something really hot burning on top of the soil. But yeah, I mean that would help too, because a lot of the nutrients are held in that organic matter, and so you may want to do both of them. Or compost some grass clippings or leaves in the fall. Just put them in the back of your garden, and then next spring add that to the area where you burned. And a lot of it will depend on what the vegetables look like that you're growing in that area. If they look fine, then you're okay,
Okay.
Okay.
Now, the other question I had quickly is, how come I get beautiful green on my radishes, but I get really lousy bulbs?
You're probably giving them too much nitrogen.
Too much nitrogen.
Yeah, don't fertilize them at all. Radishes don't need a whole lot of fertilizer. And so what you want to do is incorporate some leaves or hay or straw in the area. Well, it sounds like you fertilize your garden too much because
maybe.
The carrots grow bigger tops and nothing underneath. And, if you've got a beautiful, lush garden and there's the tomatoes are really tall but they don't blossom real early, it's a good sign that you're over-fertilizing them. And so, work some raw organic matter, leaves, straw, hay, grass clippings, some of that stuff into your soil, and that'll soak up some of the nitrogen that's giving you those those big tops. Okay.
Well, the carrots seem to be good, and they grow them relatively close to the radishes, but the radishes still seem to get green and blossom, or even if I let them go that. But I don't get a lot of bulbs.
Well,
what bulbs I get are relatively small, but.
Put the radishes where the carrots were, or better yet, incorporate. What I do in my garden is I put some radishes in with the carrots and the beets that I plant, because the radishes come up quickly, and then you eat them, and then the carrots come. So
Okay. All right. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we got 1 minute left in the show, so we'll have to be brief. Caller, go right ahead.
What is causing some of my tulips? The leaves get real wide and big and fall over, and they don't bloom.
It means that you take the leaves off too soon. The leaves put the nutrients back into the bulbs, and if the bulbs are not healthy enough, they don't form a flower primordia in the fall, and they just throw out leaves, and they don't. So what I do is get a bulb booster fertilizer and put that on them right now, and maybe that'll get them back into a flowering state for next spring.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks for calling.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all the callers today, as we are just about out of time. And again, what's happening at the store, Dick?
Well, we're fully loaded. Got a lot of vegetable plants, cabbage, cauliflower, lots of different tomato varieties, and some of the new grafted tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants. Those things really work. I use them in my garden, and they don't start going downhill in August and September like most tomatoes do. They just keep blossoming and fruiting as long as you follow the directions. You have to follow the directions that come with them. That graft has to be out of the ground, and the vines cannot touch the ground anywhere, or you're negating the graft. Then we've got a lot of fruit trees and shade trees. Our potted area is open now, and lots of different things out there, evergreens and perennial. Our perennial yard is open and fully running, and Mother's Day this weekend, so don't forget your mother. We get some beautiful hanging baskets, and we've got bud and bloom roses that just came out of the greenhouse, and I didn't see a lot of color, but the buds are right there, so your mother would get full use of that rose bush all summer long, and if you do it right, you'll have it next spring and summers to come. So got a lot of things, a lot of good people in the garden center to answer your questions. It's our time of the year to make the yards look great.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And store hours, Dick?
Store hours are 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 on Saturday, and we're not open on Sunday in Randolph. In the stores in Madison and Stevens Point, it's 9 to 7 Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 on Saturday, and 10 to 3 on Sunday. So
all right.
A lot of good stuff to sell and good advice, and, come on over.
Come on over. Well, thanks again, Dick. We'll see you next week.
Yep.
All right. That's Dick Zondag from Jung's Garden Center in Randolph. The preceding program, a paid presentation of Jung Garden Center.